Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know how many of you have been to Greece, but you've all been there now. That was wonderful, Yanis. Thank you. Thank you. Now, on top of that, I'm going to ring the bell. And I'm now about to embarrass myself because I'm going to say good morning and welcome in Greek. Or I might be saying, I don't know which way is the bathroom, but I'm going to try. And it's Kalimera kai kalos esate. Have I got it nearly right? Good evening. Well, Kalimara. Yes, Kalimara. All right. Well, I tried. And apologies to Yanis. It's just a joy to see you all here this morning. And for anyone visiting us for the first time, a special welcome to you. We're so glad you're here and invite you to join us for coffee afterwards downstairs after the service. Thanks to Annabelle, who is doing double duty today. We are the North Shore Unitarian community, where our mission is to empower people to live with depth and meaning and purpose. And we aspire to live that mission with joy and hope and actions. And we're led by our 8 principles and the wisdom of the many sources we use to help us along the way. We meet on the shared territory of the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh people and hold a reverence and a respect for the land and for those who hold it dear. My name is Leslie Gibbons, and I'm your service associate this morning, and we are so fortunate to have Bruce Grierson here with us today to give us our reflection. Last week, he introduced us to his friend and fellow author, John Vaillant, and today, we're going to be visiting Greece and the worlds of the gods and myths and what we might, as you use, learn from them. And a huge thank you to Yanis Sahamas. Yeah. He's joining us and sharing his music, and we appreciate him being here and setting the tone for this wonderful country with its glorious history and its ancient gods. Now I'd like to light the chalice, and with Bruce's help, we all come from different places, from different religions, different beliefs, but here we are together to find comfort and connection and to meet any challenges with love. We're walking our paths side by side this morning, so let's say our opening words together. You can see them on the screen. Let's say them together. Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. In this community, we celebrate people from all walks of life, no matter how you make your living, how you experience the sacred, no matter who you are, and certainly no matter who you love. We hope you will always feel welcome here. And the words we just spoke, light of understanding and warmth of sharing and peace, I hope they resonate here every time we meet. As Rumi writes, and it's very appropriate for here, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about ideas, language, even the phrase each other. They don't make any sense. I'll meet you there. Time for our cares and our centering. have a moment of quiet. And so while Yanni plays for us, I invite you now into a time of centering and contemplation. I know there are people here today whose hearts are full of struggle, or who carry with them those who are struggling or in pain. And there are people and events to celebrate and acknowledge. We have a ritual each Sunday, and I invite you to participate in it. If you have a care or a worry you wish to release from your heart, please come and put a stone in the water. And if you have something you'd like to celebrate or acknowledge, please light a candle on this far side of the sanctuary. Come up now if you wish to do so.
Πέρασε στην γωνιά του δρόμου. Εκείνη που ήρθε και μου γέμισε την άδεια τη ζωή μου. Έφυγε και γέμισε τη γη μες στην ψυχή μου. Όνειρο πάντα θα βγει. Εκείνη όνειρο πάντα θα βγει. Εκείνη και γκρέμισε χίλιες αναμνήσεις. Εκείνη που ήρθε και μου γέμισε την άδεια τη ζωή μου. Έφυγε και γέμισε τη γη μες στην ψυχή μου. Όνειρο πάντα θα μείνει. Εκείνη όνειρο πάντα θα μείνει. Εκείνη Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Thank you so much.
There's something about Greek music that makes you either want to dance or cry, and possibly at the same time. That was beautiful. This morning, with quiet reflection, I would like to light a candle of global concern to acknowledge all those outside our community who are facing hardship, those who could use a kind thought or even a Unitarian prayer, let's hold them in our silent hearts this morning for just a minute. Thank you. Now, please stand if you are willing and able while Allison will lead us in our very first hymn. Well, you know, the title of this Sunday is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Delphi. And what can the ancient Greeks teach us about being a better you? Well, here are my few thoughts on that. Well, yes, in fact, something did happen to me, not on the way to Delphi, but there. And I learned that there may be many mysteries beyond our understanding, a very you thought. I learned that an open mind lets the light in. And if you're open to an experience without prejudgment, that experience can change or affirm the course of your life. So let me tell you a story. My first holiday with Maurice, my late and desperately missed husband, was to Greece. And I've made sure that the candles are lit on his candlestick to just as a memory of him. We had just begun a very complicated love affair, rife with difficulties. Husbands, mine, children, 8, 6 mine, 2 his. Long distance, he lived on Bowen, I lived in Victoria, and we did not know how to proceed. Holidays were easy, right? But life was difficult. That was the question I took to Delphi. Where am I going? What am I doing? And am I going to be all right? The many Greek gods, their tendencies to help, to instigate trouble, to interfere, to be dangerously jealous and vengeful, always intrigued me. I saw them as reflections of all those characteristics, those things we have within us. And a part of me thought they made much more sense than one God. How could one God keep track of the earth and everything in it? How could one God do that? There are shattering important things and trivially mean things to keep track of. The gods would be good for that. I also thought that their squabbling was more human and approachable than a distant, unknowable, and unrelatable one God. And even if their power was often unleashed on a whim, at least they were paying attention. Well, most of the time. That being said, of all the many wonderful places to go in Greece to experience the ancient, I wanted to go to Delphi. Maurice and I had embarked on this really perilous journey of our own, just to be together, and we knew there would be dangerous shoals and sirens and strong winds and possibly a metaphorical cyclops to challenge our journey. We needed the help of the gods, and I wanted to know what advice the oracle might deign to give me if I approached her with some gifts and an open heart. I even approached Athena's temple with an offering and an entreaty to help me on my path. I'm sure you know there are known to be what are called hotspots in the world. Varanasi in India, Uluru in Australia, and Delphi in Greece. Some have specific belief systems attached to them, and some are simply based on energy and vibration. And all should be approached with respect and openness if you're sensitive to their histories. And they are sacred to many visitors, the spiritual hearts of many believers over centuries, if not thousands of years. I have felt that energy in India, I felt it in the Himalayas, I felt it powerfully in Greece. On the way to Delphi, the Gulf of Corinth and its tiny bays stretch out in front of me. Delphi lies among the dry hills across pale green, as it always has. In a tiny bay, the softest water I have ever felt laps over my toes, and I pick up smooth, small stones to take with me as gifts from the sea. Maurice and I enter Delphi in the very early morning, the first through the just opened gates. Before the tour buses and their noisy guides, and walk in the sunlight with cliff swallows and small singing birds above us. It's all breezes and sunlight and cool stone. I'm on my way alone to the stadium, the very highest site in Delphi. And I sit, and I'm alone, and I wait. And in my mind, as clear as any voice could be, I hear, "You have come to Delphi in a strange way. You walk on dry earth, freshly sprinkled. You need peace before company, strength before commitment, and faith before trust. You want for nothing, but you can't see it. Listen to my voice and be still." And my questions were answered. Perhaps the power of these special places and the quiet and the openness of your heart allow you to find those inner resources to hear your inner voice guide you on the right path. In all the noise and bustle and anxiety and complications of life now, I think we've lost the wisdom of the ancients, and we've lost the quiet to hear our own wisdom. I think those gods are always there in us if we listen and be still. They can toy with you, they can lead you astray, or they can guide you to your better self. They and we can be the voices of our better selves if we listen and be still. And those are my Unitarian thoughts. Now I invite you into our time of offering. And it's a spiritual practice I think we all feel closely every Sunday. During June, the outreach recipient will be the Indian Residential School Survivors Society, providing services to support survivors and their loved ones, students, and intergenerational survivors as well. So if the ushers, please, will come forward, we would appreciate. Yanni, would you like to play for a moment? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
feel bad on you. Thank you so much.
Well, if that didn't bring out your inner Zorba, I don't know what would. Thank you, Yanis. And thank you all for your generosity and for all that you do to help create our wonderful community here, and for all you do for those who need help outside our walls. And let me take this moment to especially to thank Bruce and Allison, Yanis, Annabelle for making us coffee and taking care of the computer, Malcolm for his work, for everyone who helped with the service today. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Allison, will you lead us, please, in one more song? Stand if you would like, and hurry.
Turned on my mic a little early and I could hear myself breathing like Darth Vader up there. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I would like to start with a little gesture of hospitality. Am I right? Xenia? Xenia, is that Greek hospitality? What is it? Okay, yeah. Philoxenia. Philoxenia, love of hospitality. All right, so I'm going to need a customer for this one, and I'm looking at you, Barry. I wonder if I can borrow you for a moment here.
Will we hug?
There may be hugging, but not at first. All right, so I'm going to offer you this lovely cup, and I'm going to have you stand maybe right about there. No. And I'm just going to pour you a beverage, if I may. Okay. I'll just get a beverage going here for you. That's a little bit for you there. Oh, maybe a little bit more for you. Okay. Top you right up. Yeah.
Whoa!
Whoa! Wait a minute. Oh, hard lines, Barry. Well, you could try. It looks like pretty much the whole thing has drained out the bottom. I'm so sorry about that. Hard lines. Yeah. Well, we'll have to, get you after. Get you another one that works properly. Oh. So thank you. Good sport about that. So this cup comes to us from ancient Greece in the 6th century BC. And, well, this particular one, I think, comes from China last Thursday. But the cup itself was invented by Pythagoras, the very same one who haunted your geometry class, that guy. But it turns out he was also a philosopher and a freelance genius, because the way this cup works you can see it's got a little chamber in the center. And that chamber, if you fill the mug beyond the top of it, nothing happened until we hit the top of it there, and it becomes a siphon that sucks the entire contents out through the bottom. It's actually the same principle that modern toilets operate on. So pretty impressive that this gentleman figured this out 2,500 years ago. So the Greek shopkeeper who sold us this one said, "I am a mechanical engineer. I do not understand Pythagoras. He is too smart for me." So we discovered Pythagoras' cup at the Museum of Ancient Technology in Athens, where you can also find replicas of other ingenious devices that the ancient Greeks came up with, a lot of which still figure in our lives in some fashion, like the world's first robots in there, and the world's first vending machine, and Socrates' alarm clock, which he invented to wake himself up after 7 hours by releasing a bunch of clattering marbles. And this is not to be confused with Plato's alarm clock, which was a bit different and woke him up after only 4 hours, because he was more of a go-getter, I guess. And right there among them was Pythagoras' cup. So what was he thinking, dreaming up this thing? Well, as the story goes, Pythagoras was supervising a bunch of water workers, and he was keeping an eye on their wine consumption. And he gave them these sneaky cups, and as long as the workers took only a modest amount, they could have their drinks. But the first guy to get greedy and fill it to the rim, and I'm not suggesting you were getting greedy there, Barry. I put you up to that. The first guy to get greedy, the cup would become bewitched and spill its contents, and that would strike fear into the rest of the workers and keep them all on the straight and narrow. So the cup was a powerful talisman. It plucked the strings of superstition. It tapped into the powerful mystical imaginations that served as the conscience of folks back then. And that, to me, is the great paradox of the ancient Greeks. On the one hand, here was this great flourishing of science, mathematics and physics and anatomy and philosophy. Democracy was hatched here. Stoicism, too, which is basically early cognitive behavioral therapy, right? The rational mind ruled. And yet, at the same time, they were sharing wild stories about gorgons and mermaids and centaurs and giants and three-headed dogs. And these stories capture what we feel inside. They offer clues about how to live so well that when we die, the gods will fall silent and take off their hats. So to travel to Greece, as we were very fortunate to do, is to plant yourself squarely in the middle of the mystery of all of this. You know, left brain, right brain, logic and magic, thinking and feeling. And you have to sit with the ambiguity in a very you kind of way. So as we made our way around the country on a route designed to hit the mythological hotspots, we found ourselves wondering, how do these ancient Greek myths and teachings map onto our own principles of our UU faith? How similar are the playbooks here? Could we find in each place we visited a kind of overarching principle that would have satisfied an ancient Greek and a modern Unitarian Universalist? So I'm going to now breeze you through a few stops on our tour. Leslie so beautifully set up Delphi, so I won't take you there. And by the way, I should say off the top, I'm no expert in any of this. Most of what I know I learned from the girls, who, to be fair, are pretty passionate about this stuff. So here we go. Stop one. Athens, one of the oldest continually inhabited cities on Earth. So wherever you can think of going in Athens, folks beat you there by 7,000 years. Up on the Acropolis, just in front of the Parthenon here, sits the Odeon, an amphitheater built into the hillside. And what Sophocles and Aristophanes and the boys were up to, and they were all boys, by the way, theater was an old boys' club, and actually only men were allowed to even see the plays. But what the playwrights were up to was to entertain the soldiers and prick the conscience of these men and make them think twice about all the killing they were doing and to help them process those strong feelings. And that's what a lot of the myths are about, too. They're cathartic. They were, and they still are to some degree. So for the girls, This was all sparking neurons. And as we trudged up the hill, Maddie started unpacking myths from memory, like the one about Odysseus and Ajax, who vied to inherit Achilles' armor after he died. And that one had a depressing ending. Odysseus got the armor because he was meaner, basically. So I said, do you have anything that's a little more, you? And she did. She said, okay, this one's from the Iliad. At the height of the Trojan War, two mighty soldiers from opposing sides meet on a battlefield. They're Diomedes, from the Greek side, and Glaucus, from the Trojan side. They're in their chariots, staring each other down. Diomedes says, "Let us fight." And Glaucus says, "As the grandson of Bellerophon, I will." And Diomedes says, "Wait a sec, what name did you say?" And Glaucus says, "Bellerophon." And Diomedes says, "My grandfather was Omius. Our grandfathers were besties." And whereupon Diomedes plants his spear in the ground, and Glaucus does the same, and they get out of their chariots, and they shake hands, and then they actually exchange armor. And I said to Maddie, okay, now we're talking. I can work with that one. That is brotherly love right there. That's philia. That's kind of our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Bada bing, bada boom. We got it. And so on we go to the next stop, Corinth. You mentioned Corinth too. Ancient Corinth, where the winged horse Pegasus was said to be stabled, and where Heracles pulled off a couple of his labors at least, and where I drove a Ratley Citroen hatchback 140 kilometers an hour down the Patras motorway to get it to the rental shop before we had to pay for an extra day. That was my labor. Now, Corinth, as some of you will know, was also the hometown of this fellow. Is he? There he is. Anyone know? The lamp looking for an honest man? Diogenes the cynic. Very strange dude. Lived in a barrel. He slept with dogs. He had no belongings at all. I guess that, except for that lamp, he might have borrowed it. Diogenes was the only person to stand up to Alexander the Great. The story goes that in 366 AD, Alexander came through town to accept the leadership of most of Greece. And he spotted Diogenes sitting by the side of the road reading a book in the sun. And Alexander said, "Hey, I've heard of you. You're Diogenes, the philosopher. Tell me, is there anything I can do for you?" And Diogenes said, "As a matter of fact, there is. Get out of my light." So, the takeaway principle: if your needs are minimal and all you care about is living a simple and authentic life, then you are beholden to no one and you are truly free. Which sounds a little bit like a free and responsible search for meaning. Ding! Next up, Crete. Crete, where Zeus was born, and Theseus slayed the Minotaur, and Icarus flew too close to the sun. And actually, all those myths converge here at the ancient palace of Knossos, where Daedalus is said to have built the labyrinth, and for his trouble, King Minos locked him away in a prison tower so that no one could ever know the secret of how to get out of it. Now, one definition of history is that it begins the moment people start writing stuff down. And if you accept that definition, then this place, for us Westerners, is it. The Minoans, who lived here, developed a writing system called Linear A almost 4,000 years ago. We don't know what they were saying to each other because no one has deciphered it yet. And for me, this was the most mind-blowing place we visited. Because what's amazing about the Minoans is how different they were from everyone before or since. This was a Mediterranean superpower, but these people were totally peaceful. There's no depiction of fighting has ever been found on any of their jars or pots. That's why they're pretty confident about this. Women and men had equal status, and some say that's why they were such a peaceful community. I feel like the Minoans showed us what we humans have it in us to be. Here they are, they're making art, they're fashioning a high culture, they're sipping tea on the porch of their palace at the same time as some people are still living in caves. And so you go, wait, why isn't everybody in love with the Minoans? And the answer is because history is written by the survivors, in this case the Athenians, and the Athenians were the arch enemies of the Minoans. So the Athenians, masters of spin, start to rewrite the narrative, and they create the Minotaur, and they turn King Minos into a bloodthirsty tyrant. And they do all this, a therapist might say, so they can feel better about themselves. They're like, well, these guys may have been more powerful than us, but their queen slept with a bull, and they did awful things like feeding people to a monster. We make the myths that serve our needs. Takeaway principle from Kenosis: question all information, consider the sources, be intellectually humble. Boom. 2 more stops. The island of Naxos. Naxos, where Zeus was raised in a cave by nymphs. They were hiding him away to escape the wrath of his father Cronus. Now Naxos is also the stomping ground of Dionysus. No pun intended. Stomping ground. Dionysus was the god of wine and revelry. Turns out Dionysus loved this island so much, he made the land incredibly fertile, with lush vineyards and rich farmland. So Naxos is the place to indulge the senses. Now, we'd heard there was an amazing restaurant up in the hill called Avaton 1739. Avaton means a cloistered sacred space, and the restaurant indeed was part of a cloistered sacred space, an abbey, in the year 1739. So on the menu, you can still order food that the nuns would have eaten back then, the kind of food. They gave the dishes a few twists. Dishes with the famous Naxos cheese and the famous Naxos potatoes. You eat on the rooftop looking out over the Aegean. And in the other direction is an old Jesuit monastery that got converted into a business school. And if you were here in the 1920s, you might have seen, emerging from the doors of that business school, a fellow named Nikos Kazanaxanis. Yeah? Did I pronounce him right? Nikos Kazanaxanis. Okay. Nikos, with his brow furrowed because he was brewing the idea for a novel which he would go on to call Zorba the Greek. Zorba the Greek, who said that reason can be as stifling as fear. Zorba the Greek, who said that the answer to any question is dancing. So the island of Naxos changed us. It changes everyone. On Naxos, you get out of your head and into your heart, which I would say can be a challenge for Unitarians. It may be the work we most need to do. So on Naxos, we unclenched, I would say. We finally left Vancouver behind. We moved from living on Chronos, or chronological time, to Kairos, deep time, experiential time. We became a little more Dionysian, I would say. And in that restaurant on the hill, that cloistered sacred space with the to die for ceviche sea bass, there was a quote on the wall. It was written in glass, so you had to be paying attention to notice it was even there. And the quote said, "For 1 minute, stand in silence, look up at the sky, and contemplate how amazing life is." Now, I don't think we UUs have a principle that quite captures that, but we have a source. As source number 1, the direct experience of awe. These are the gates of heaven. This is the tightest pinch point in the Samaria Gorge, one of the deepest canyons in all of Europe. Now, by this point in the trip, we've been brining in ancient myths for a week and a half. We've suspended disbelief for so long that we're a little bit drunk on magic. And as you descend into the gorge and the cliffs are closing around you, you encounter, surprise, rescue donkeys. So this is a national park, and people come from all over, and some of them get hurt in there, and it's hard to get them out. So rescue donkeys are stationed at intervals, just waiting to snap into action, like this guy. And we're walking down the trail, and I said, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I kind of hope that someone twists an ankle so that we can see them getting taken out on a donkey. 5 seconds later, Jen goes, "Ow!" She's twisted her ankle. She goes, "Bruce!" And luckily, Luckily, it's not that bad, and she doesn't need a rescue donkey, but the look she gives me makes me feel like I might be needing a rescue donkey pretty quickly here. And I go, wait a minute, wait, what? You don't think I actually caused that, right? By saying that, right? Do you? And Jen, who is a scholar and is generally way less woo than I am, says, I don't know, man. There are powerful forces we're dealing with in here. People used to look to the sky for reasons. It's only the last 100 years that there's been any appreciable number of atheists at all. In Greece, these ancient sites we'd been visiting plunged us back into what Karen Armstrong, the religious scholar, calls the axial age. From 900 BC to around 200 BC, a time of ingenious science, but also an incredible religious flowering. The major world religions appeared pretty much all at once. Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, and the Greeks, with their rationalism, were right there in the mix. It's like whoever you are, whatever your circumstances, there is no escaping the mystical. There are going to be gods in your life, even if you have to invent them. So, back to this cup. I told you how Pythagoras used it as a kind of teaching tale. He was preaching the virtues of moderation and warning against the vice of avarice. More than a sip and you feel the drip. Don't be greedy. But here's the thing. We don't know any of that. We really were just guessing. We have no idea what Pythagoras was thinking. There are no texts around the cup except stories written much later when the PR department moved in. It could well be that this cup is nothing more than a dribble glass, the world's first practical joke. And if that's true, I think it might prove that Pythagoras was actually the wisest of those ancient thinkers. There were 147 pithy sayings that the 7 sages of Delphi came up with, and they wrote some of them on the walls of that temple up at Delphi. Things like, nothing to excess, and know thyself. But at some point, we're going to unearth a hidden number 148. You gotta laugh. No matter what happens, all we can control is how we react to it. Crying, yeah, it's appropriate in the short term, but after that, you gotta laugh. In a place called Meteora, our waiter talked about the devastating financial crisis of 2012 and how awful it had been for his country. And then just as they're digging out, boom, COVID hits. So it goes with the Greeks all through history. Wars, invasions, natural disasters. And then our waiter, his face opened up into a great big smile, and he laughed. And he said, if you laugh, you win. And to that I say, Amen. Thank you.
Σκότωσε γιατί την αγαπούσα, γιατί την είχα σαν μικρό παιδί κι όλα τα λάθη της τα συγχωρούσα την στιγμή μαζί να βγει. Πες ό,τι θες, καρδιά δεν πειράζει. Ακόμα μια φορά σε συγχωρώ. κάτι τιμήκα πάντοτε ψηλά, γιατί μέσα στα μάτια την κοιτούσα, γιατί βλέπω μόνο να γελά. Τώρα γυρνάει παντού και με κοιτάζει, λέει πως ήμουν ενώπιος εγώ. Πες ό,τι θες, καρδιά μου δεν πειράζει, ακόμα μια φορά σε συγχωρώ. Τώρα γυρνάει παντού και με πειράζει, λέει πως ήμουν ενώπιος εγώ. Πες ό,τι θες, καρδιά μου δεν πειράζει, ακόμα μια φορά σε συγχωρώ. Πες ό,τι θες, καρδιά μου δεν πειράζει, ακόμα μια φορά σε συγχωρώ.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Alison, I believe that you would like to say a few words, would you
Sure.
not?
Just to thank everybody for so many of you came out to the concert last night and it went really, really well.
Lovely, lovely. Final words from me. Part of an E. Cummings poem, slightly adapted by me, forgive me. Thank you, gods, for this amazing day, for the leaping, greenly spirits of trees and a blue, true dream of sky, for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. Thank you all. Please join me now as we extinguish our flame, and the words will appear on your screen. We extinguish this flame. Carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. Lovely. Stand if you would like. Join hands or elbows for our closing song. Circle round for freedom.